So I'm having a transmission built for my third gen Dodge. It's that time. So I want to kind of start tinkering with a little bit more. It's been pretty stock up until now. The one thing I've always noticed is even with the stock transmission on just like a tow tune, every time it hits a gear, you can see the four-wheel drive shifter. You know, you're starting to lean into it, pulling hard. You see the four-wheel drive levers start tweaking and stuff. It's just the trans mount. So I thought, well, it's a 20-year-old truck. Probably could do a trans mount when I'm doing a brand new transmission. So I slid under there, felt the rubber on it, on the stock mount, and it's pretty squishy. So like, well, okay, cool. I'll just find a polyurethane one. Went to Prothane, went to Energy, suspension, nothing. If you got a second gen, you're in luck because it's just the typical, it looks like a GM mount, just a poly block. So started digging into it a little bit more, and of course, third gens and up have kind of a funky looking little mount. And there is nothing really other than just some aftermarket and stock replacement stuff. Going to be turning the screws to this truck a little bit, and I was starting to think, you know, I'm getting up 700-800 foot-pounds of torque. Stock mount's going to be a little sketchy. So there's a couple different ways that I'm thinking about reinforcing the stock mount. I did just go ahead and buy a new mount itself just to see maybe the aftermarket stuff had a little bit stronger rubber for the bushings, whatever. And I can put this thing in the vise and squish it with my fingers. I don't know if you can really tell this or not, but I can't believe how gummy these things are. So I kind of was looking around and found this Forsch polymer company. They have this stuff for sale. They do it by the pound. You can get the dyed activator or whatever. I don't really care if it's red or black or tan. There's a couple different grades of the polymer as well. And what I think I'm going to do is pretty much use duct tape to make a mold around the gaps in between these factory biscuits is what we're going to call them. There's just so much space in here that can be filled with something a lot stiffer. And then also this lower pad where it seems to rock a lot. I'm going to try to fill all this void as well. So I think this is going to work out pretty well. You can use, is it Loctite? I can't remember exactly the brand, but they have the caulkable polyurethane in tubes. Kind of thought about that for a minute because it's gonna be a lot easier. It's a lot thicker. It's for roof flashing or something like that, what they advertise it for. There's like $7-8 a tube. But I started thinking about filling the actual voids in here, and you're gonna have air pockets with the thicker stuff. So that's why I went with the actual pourable liquid version. It's gonna be a little bit more of a hassle taping everything off. You can't really use a glove in your finger to kind of just smear it where you want, but I'm kind of not going for that anyways. So let me get this thing in the mount quick. I'm going to show a couple areas a little closer of where I'm trying to fill, and I'm going to do a couple videos on just the truck, putting it from reverse to drive, showing how much the stock mount moves, and then I'll do a road video of it before I actually install the new mount and see just what the difference is. I do have a couple other ideas to stiffen this up more if the poly doesn't get the movement under control as much as I want. So I went with the 80A polymer just so there is still some movement in it. When you get into like the 90A, 90B, there's a couple different charts on these things. I'll look up and try to attach a picture of it here shortly. But this is kind of in the middle, where it's still gonna have a little bit of flex, but it's not gonna be just rock hard. And that's kind of what I'm going for, because I do think that the trans is gonna have to move a little bit. Not gonna hurt anything anyways. If this turns out good, I'll be doing the motor mounts too. So this is kind of the test piece. You don't really have to buy a new engine or a new transmission mount. For like $25-30, why not? So if nothing else, it'll save you a lot of time, which is the cleaning of the grease and all the road grime off of it. But give me a few minutes, I'm gonna get this thing inspect it a little more, kind of show you what I'm going to do, and then I'll get to taping it up and mix this bad boy up. I bought 2 kits, should make about 2 pounds. I wasn't sure how much of the product I'm going to use, so I'll make a note of that as well. So with this mount, you can see that there's these 2 little rubber biscuits that are basically holding the whole force of the transmission in place. If you look down inside this gap here, there is a little bit of a wall separating it, and it's just super thin from casting. I'm going to try to actually cut some of that out with an X-Acto to let the liquid flow in between and just seal it up all nice. That way I can tape the whole bottom of it off, all the sides up, and then I'll leave a couple holes at the top to pour it through. That should get all the air pockets out and everything is kind of the goal. I am going to try to bring it all the way out to the sides here and just really encase this whole thing. You can see that it also is up a ways, so I'm going to go across the bottom of this and just try to pour this whole thing just as solid as possible. I'm going to get to cleaning this up a little bit. No real reason to video it. I'm going to use a grinder, just a buffer wheel, to get this down to metal, get rid of some of the paint on it, the excess rubber from when they were molding it. Just gives something good for the new polymer, the liquid, to adhere to. So give me a few minutes to clean this up, and I'll see if I can't get at least some of this, I don't know, little ribbon in the center punctured so we can get this thing flowing well. Now I got a little light on this thing. I'm going to try to finagle it with one hand and everything else. But this is a very thin piece. You can see it comes out pretty easy. And that'll be plenty to let everything flow down through to the bottom. Finish that side up here in a second, but that's kind of what I was looking at. I got this side done already if I get the light to it. And that goes all the way through. So a couple seconds with the X-Acto, pretty easy. And that's going to be the key to this whole progress. I'm going to get all these, like I say, edges cleaned up here quick and start taping it off. So I just kind of roughed up everything, roughed up the rubber the best I could with just a regular roll-lock disc. This does mount in the truck. Cross members at the bottom through the studs, and then there's a little adapter plate that bolts to the back of the trans. So this is up, we'll call it. There's a lot, let's get under some light here. There's actually a lot of space inside this bushing, this factory mount, to get a pretty good amount of urethane in there. So I'm going to spend a little time, duct tape this bad boy up, and I'm going to try to come off of this edge and then taper it over. As long as you've got room for, it looked like a, I don't know, probably 15 millimeter, something like that, bolt to go through, you'll be fine. So I'm going to bring it out pretty close to this. I can just grind it back a touch or whatever if I need to. But I'm going to try to get as much of this poly in there as I can. So give me a few minutes to get this thing mummied up, and we'll get to mixing. So I got about half of it taped up. You can see the gap we're going to have underneath here, and you can see there's going to be quite a bit of this stuff put in here. That's kind of what the back's looking like so far. I'm going to take a couple slits here and kind of pack this down into the corners, and then I'm going to run, once I get the front of it built, go straight through here with a couple different rows of tape. I'm just going to over tape the heck out of this thing because you don't want to have a major leak. I do have just a, like I said before, an idea if there is a seeping spot, how to take care of that after the pour. But you kind of get the idea of where we're going to be filling through here, all the way underneath this whole saddle, underneath the saddle for this top plate or whatever you want to call it. So I'm not sure, probably going to take more than 1 pound of this stuff, just judging by the space that I'm filling. I'm probably going a little more than needed, but I think it's going to work out pretty good. I'll get this front wrapped up a bit, and hopefully it looks just about like this. So after taping and taping and then taping some more and second guessing and taping, and I think we're pretty much set. You can see there's gonna be a pretty good cavity inside here that we're gonna be doing. I'm kind of making this my pour side, and then I built up this other edge. That way I can see when it's full that it comes up, lets air out that side, and it should be nice and straight. So I made my fill side a little bit higher than the metal bracket, so I know I get plenty of liquid in there. The thing that I was saying kind of got a trick, just in case there is a corner that I didn't quite get sealed. I went and stole a little Tupperware container from the wife and some sand from the kids' sandbox. So I'm going to put this in, get it level, and I'm going to take the extra sand off to the side here and actually put it down, pack it down in here, pack it around the sides a bit. So theory is if there is a little bit of a seepage leak, the sand's going to absorb it, hopefully stop it enough to where it doesn't just go all the way out. But I put probably 2 to 3 layers of tape on over different areas, and I taped this all up, kept kind of butterfly cutting it with the X-Acto. I think it's going to turn out pretty good. We'll get this thing in the sand, and we'll get to mixing the special sauce here shortly. So I'm going to try to get this pretty level, just so I know that it's not going to be horribly off to one side or the other. The sand is pretty awesome to help out with this project. And let's see if we can kind of get her this way. Pretty close. I'm just going to lightly pack around it, do the corners, the edges, etc. I think that this is going to be, like most things that I do, a little bit of overkill, but I'd rather have that than the opposite. Yes. Make sure to get some down inside the bushing too. And so on. I'll finish this up, get to stirring. There's lots of terrifying information on the back of this thing about how toxic it is. So I'll be using my paint mask, gloves. I've got a small fan set up off to the side, blowing any fumes away from me. I've got windows open and the garage door. So once I get to mixing this stuff, I won't be saying anything. Just made a very primitive funnel on a piece of the cardboard. Should be pretty quick pour. I'm going to do this 1 pound is how they say it. Probably be less than this quart by the time we get it mixed up. But I'm going to get to mixing and hopefully not pass out. Makes about half a quart, if you can hear that at all. Definitely enough, but it's pretty close. So yeah, you can get away with 1 pound. It's been about 4 hours or so since I poured it. You can actually kind of handle it now. Still seems a little wet to the touch, but I'm very glad I did the sand trick. As you can see, the inside corners that I was kind of concerned about did leak, and the sand did its job and stopped it. I don't know how much of this duct tape I'm going to be able to pull off. I kind of bedded some of it in the front here when I kind of was being a little bit more cautious, making sure that it had plenty, because I did realize that it was dropping slowly, which is explained here. Well, I'm going to start trying to unwrap it a little bit. I'm not really trying to win a beauty contest with this, but I don't want it to look like... So, well, it's not completely set up. I'm going to pull it back a little bit, and I'm going to let it sit all night before I kind of test exactly how strong it is. Just kind of sticking the stir stick down in here. It does have some pretty good flex to it still. So I'm guessing probably 24-hour minimum before it's completely set. I wasn't sure if this was like epoxy or how it hardened. Well, I was pretty surprised how easy and smooth removing the duct tape was. I thought the two would have just bonded itself together and it'd be a sticky nightmare. But yeah, it just slid right off. While it's still kind of gummy like this, I just took a razor blade. It's super easy to kind of shape some of the weird dents and stuff off of it. I'll probably just let this get a little harder and hit it with like a roll-lock disc or a grinder or a sanding wheel, just to kind of smooth it out a touch. But I mean, that has to be a dramatic improvement. I figured getting the getting the duct tape off and getting some actual air to this thing overnight is going to help it cure a little faster. I don't know exactly how it cures, if it's just a chemical reaction or if it does temperature dependent kind of thing. But yeah, around 4 hours you're going to want to unwrap this thing before it turns into a rock on you. So now that I let it set up a few days, this thing is beefy. It turned out pretty nice. It does get pretty hard. There's still a little bit of deflection with your fingernail, that kind of stuff. But as far as the mount moving at all, just with your hands, that's all gone. There's no need for going stage 2 on trying to make this thing any tougher. It does sand down fairly easy, if you can see, with just a grinder. If you wanted to really kind of make the finish a little better, I really don't care. I just wanted it to be more of a solid mount. So now that we got this thing done, I know it's cured. The range on cure time's kind of all over the place, from 24 hours to 7 days. So I went about 3 days before I'm gonna actually install it. I am doing a new transmission in this thing, but just for apples and apples right now, I'm gonna stick a GoPro up underneath the truck, do a couple reverse drive, maybe kind of flip brake it a little bit, see if I can get some good movement on the 4-wheel drive stick. Might run it down the road, and then I'll go ahead and pop this mount in and then do the same test. So I'll try to keep all the RPMs and all that stuff as close for an A to B comparison as possible, but I can already tell this thing is going to be dramatically better than that weak, you know, squeezing it together kind of situation we had before. Got the old one out, and one thing worth mentioning, which if I were to do this again, I would probably do a little different, is this aftermarket one is much thinner steel than the original. There's nothing wrong with this original one. Nothing's torn or anything, just the actual mounting plates. I'm gonna go ahead and get this installed, and if I see any sort of movement here around this thin piece of steel, then I'm gonna start over with my second kit and do the original. But I just want to give you a heads up, if this is something kind of like my situation, I bought the replacement part because I didn't want the truck down for, you know, the 3 or 4 days it took to build this. You can always just get a cheapie like I did, throw it in, and then poly your original. I'm gonna get this taken care of and get another video here quick. After installing the new mount, I just got back from a test drive. I went to the exact same spot, tried to go the exact same mile an hour. It's unbelievable how much better this is. I'm very happy with it. It doesn't flop around. It doesn't feel like it's just, it felt like something loose almost under the truck. I don't know. Wasn't real happy with it ever since I got this thing 15 years ago. Never really put the pieces together to start messing around with the trans mount because I was pretty much just using it as a work truck. But now that I'm starting to kind of hot rod it a little more, this is a great upgrade for anybody doing any kind of sled pulls. If you drag race, if you're pulling heavy trailers, absolutely recommend going this route. You're going to get a touch more vibration that you can feel in the truck. That's to be expected. So that's kind of the reason why I went with the kind of middle grade urethane, to try to help with some of the vibration dampening. But the trade-off's excellent. You'll see here shortly when I roll this video of the new mount installed. If you guys like this video, please hit like and subscribe, and I'll keep on working on a couple more little fine-tuning adjustments on this thing. I'm probably gonna do the engine mounts next, so stay tuned, and we'll see if we can't get this thing driving like it should. Thanks for watching.